Security has been a key concern of the Hong Kong government for the past few years. In March, it finally enacted the city's domestic national security legislation, 21 years after it was first mooted. With the mission completed, the government is now redoubling its efforts in lifting the economy as it enters its third year in office.
Where does security fit in this new policy emphasis? What role will the Security Bureau play? Are there new areas of concern in this drive for economic transformation? Here with us is Chris Tang, Secretary of Security. He oversees policies related to all aspects of national security and law and order in Hong Kong, including leading the 6 disciplinary forces. Welcome, Mr. Tang.
Hi, JP, Jess.
Welcome, Mr. Tang. So let's start with the overview of your bureau's work. So do you agree with the view that now Hong Kong has its own national security laws? The focus should shift from security to other areas which could improve the business environment, and how might this affect the scope of your bureau's work?
All right. I think, of course, now the society has been changed from chaos to order and then advancing to prosperities. But we couldn't forget about, national security is the foundation for development, and stability is also the premises on prosperity. So while we are advancing our business, and we have to still taking care of the national security aspect. And I think obviously we are still facing some kind of threats, at least 3 areas of threats to our national security. First of all is the homegrown terrorists, as you can illustrated by the dragon slaying group, and also the foreign interference, and also those soft resistance by the local agents of the foreign interference. But having said that, in fact, our Security Bureau and our law enforcement agencies, apart from enforcing our law and safeguarding our national security, we also do a lot of business facilitation at the same time. For example, like visa relaxation, like the recent introduced mainland visitor permit to allow the Hong Kong permanent and non-Chinese residents to visit mainland with a card form of permit. So we're doing both.
You've previously made comments about the Hong Kong Journalists Association. So how do you see the Wall Street Journal's decision to sack the association's new chairwoman, Selina Chang?
Right. So I think you have to ask the Wall Street Journal about the reason behind why they sacked the editor. But I think it's not correct to put an equation saying that you sack someone is because of political reasons, or it's suppressing press freedom. I think it's very dangerous to put a equal sign there. And I'm not sure about the reason behind why Wall Street Journal sacked that reporter or editor, right? But you're talking about the Hong Kong Journalists Association. I do not think it is well recognized. I think sometimes it bear a negative connotation. As you can see, starting from 2019, they advocate everyone is a reporter. They advocate a 13 years old of age boy, they're a reporter. And they advocate someone that filming the body of a lady police officers making abusive comment, they advocate they are professional reporters. And yet you can see, starting from 2019, there are some former committee members of the Hong Kong, the Journalists Association being arrested for obstructing police officers or similar offenses. And as you can see, the composition of the member of the association, you can see it is mainly from foreign correspondents, and they are individual reporters. The only local media that I can think of out of it is one from the 01 report. So does it really represent the journalists in Hong Kong? I'm not sure. But I think it's not well recognized in association. Is it because the Wall Street Journal want to distance from them or whatever? I try not to speculate.
And let's move on to the post-2019 environment. So 5 years on, we have still seeing some fresh prosecution of cases related to the 2019 social unrest earlier this month. So how many cases from the 2019 protests were still under police investigation?
So since the 2019, those offences relating to black-led violence, we have arrested about just a little bit more than 10,000, and we have prosecuted around 3,000. for the remaining case that we are still doing investigation. I would like to reiterate that unless it is prescribed by the law that there's a time limit for prosecution, or else as long as we have sufficient evidence, and then we can always proceed with the case. As you can see, just a couple of weeks ago, and we have prosecuted a couple of people for the offenses they have committed in 2019.
But what has delayed the government so long in initiating prosecution for some cases?
I think there's no delay. It's because, as I said, this case is very complicated. You imagine, like in Hong Kong, right? You're talking about hundreds of people. They turn out and they do a riot, and then we have to view a lot of CCTV, and then we have to identify the individual, and we have to put together the evidence, and we have to seek legal advice. And at that time, as I said, there's over 10,000 people being arrested. So I think we have tried our best to put together the case to court.
But is 5 year a reasonable time frame?
Yeah. So as I said, I think we're doing investigation, and as I said, sometimes we really need times to collect evidence.
Some legal scholars have earlier highlighted the need for finality and closure 5 years after the arrests were made. Would authorities consider setting a deadline to wrap up police investigations and have all cases be closed?
As I said, only for those cases under the law that they have a time limit. For all other cases, there's no time frame, as long as we have sufficient evidence and then we put into the courts. And I think as a law enforcement, our responsibility is to gather evidence and then put it to the Department of Justice for consideration of prosecution. So, whether you try to having a good relations with the youth and then forfeit our duty to prosecute is not our responsibility. We collect evidence, we present to Department of Justice for consideration of prosecution. So I think people are now being clear about what happened. So they know what the police do is try to safeguard the security of Hong Kong and law and order of Hong Kong.
But do you think now it's actually harder to gauge what citizens think of the police force with national security laws in place, that people tend to be more cautious in expressing their opinions publicly?
I think obviously it takes time to rebuild the people's faith, right? So that's the reason why it's not just law enforcement, for the whole society. As you can see, like in education now at school, now every day we raise our national flag and we sing our national song, and people have the identity of being a Chinese and being a Hong Kong people living in Hong Kong, and we're Chinese. So I think with the identity being resumed, I think so now people are getting back here.
There have rarely been any protests over the past year since the national security law was imposed in 2020. Some rally organisers have abruptly called off their protest at the 11th hour, while some were asked to ensure every participant put a number tag on during the proceedings. With the city being more stable now, do you see any room to loosen such requirements?
But as a matter of fact, since 2022, after the COVID, we have never objected any public order events. When you talk about the number of those public order events, there are a lot of reasons why people do or do not hold such kind of public order events. First of all, there are many venues that they can voice out their opinion. They can, write letter to us. We can engage in a lot of dialogues, and we go out a lot to see people, to listen to their opinion. So protest is not the only way. I think secondly, our government is very responsive now. If there's any opinion from public, we react. So the satisfaction of people is high, as you can see from a number of different surveys. So if that's the case, probably they do not consider why do I still need to protest. And yet I think the most important point is that people understand now since 2019 that protest has been abused by some people, that they're trying to endanger national security. They try to hijack some peaceful protest and turn it into a riot or disorder. So people understand that if they do it there may be some bad guys try to hijack the event. So that's the reason why they consider that, I have other means of reflecting my opinion. Why don't I use other means?
But now with national security laws in place to address these problems, would you think more public rallies, approved ones under the public ordinance, would actually demonstrate that Hong Kong is still free, open and vibrant?
As I said, since 2022, we have never objected any single application of those public order events. As I said, the number of the events doesn't reflect the freedom of people. It's because they consider that I have other ways to voice out my opinion. So I think you cannot just count the number of how many those protests or express of opinion to reflect the level of freedom is wrong.
But how do you see the suggestions that like the lack of protest here is actually a reflection of like residents withdrawing from participating in like government policy making, or like they feel cynical that they just don't want to be involved or they don't care about this anymore?
I do not agree with that. As I said, we engage a lot of discussions with different groups where they have opinion, we listen and we react. I think it's better than probably they consider it's better than just go out on the street and cry, because we have dialogue, we react.
How would you maintain normal cooperation with other countries such as the United States and European countries against human trafficking and drug crimes amid the geopolitical tensions now?
I think in the fight against crime, international cooperation, it's very important, and we try not to be influenced by politics. But unfortunately, like some countries, they suspend our MLA arrangement, and I think this is a shame.
There have been some countries terminating their extradition agreements with Hong Kong after 2019. Have you seen a trend of having more criminals like staying in Hong Kong, or do you see any trends or any impact brought by this termination of contracts?
I mean, of course, this kind of suspension of our mutual agreement because of political reasons, it is no good, and it is only good for the benefit of those criminals.
And moving on the immigration, is the government in talks with the mainland counterparts on how to facilitate the travels for Hong Kong residents to the mainland? Like we have now the new permits for the permanent residents. Is there any chance to expand them to cover non-permanent residents as well?
Of course, we are always looking at is there any further room that we can do to facilitate the travel between Hong Kong and mainland for not just local people, but also expatriate or even other visitors. And actually, we are also working with the mainland authorities regarding the co-location arrangement, i.e. the cooperative inspection and also the joint clearance. It will be implemented firstly and at the newly rebuilt Huang Gang boundary crossing.
Thank you very much, Mr. Tang, for joining us. You can learn more about our full conversation by following our reports on our website.